last month. Her case was passed through 3 different police jurisdictions. And as Michelle Gassoub reports, Tatiana Harrison's mother says the ball was dropped in the investigation.
Something my heart knew, but yeah, they didn't tell me she was on that boat.
Natasha Harrison's grief is raw. In August, her 20-year-old daughter Tatiana's body was identified 3 months after she was found on a 40-foot yacht held in a dry dock at this Richmond marina. Her cause of death was determined to be fentanyl toxicity and the case deemed not suspicious by police. But her mother says she's haunted by how her daughter was found.
You find her wearing only a shirt and no clothing. Like no pants, no underwear, no socks, no shoes, and you call that non-suspicious and you don't do a rape kit on her?
Tatiana had moved from Surrey to Vancouver shortly before she disappeared. She'd been battling addiction for months, but Harrison says it doesn't explain why she was on an empty boat in Richmond without her personal possessions or any drugs around her.
I can accept her passing away from an overdose. Like, it's a lot easier than accepting what it really looks like. You know, you don't take your clothes off and overdose on a boat. You know, to not be found, to not be identified.
Harrison says it took 20 days for VPD to start a search because the case was first passed on to Surrey RCMP. Now, Richmond RCMP has closed the case. They say they'll reopen it if any new evidence comes to light.
Fix your jurisdiction problem. You know, protect these girls.
Tatiana is the 4th young Indigenous woman whose body was found in the Lower Mainland since May, following the cases of Chelsea Poorman, Noelle Soup, and Kwam Manuel Godfriedson.
They're found the same way, you know, in the same state around the same time. Like all of a sudden, all their bodies turn up.
Police have said there's no evidence to suggest these cases are connected. The families reunited in their grief, now planning a vigil for their lost daughters on Saturday. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Langley.
Well, a former chief medical health officer for BC's interior region makes hundreds of thousands of dollars. He made them last year, despite being taken off the job while facing charges related to child sexual offenses. Dr. Albert Devilliers was the top doctor for interior health until he was placed on leave in June of 2021. Financial statements show he took home more than $360,000 in the last fiscal year. Devilliers is facing a number of charges, including sexual assault, sexual interference, and making sexually explicit material available to a child. Well, the former Vancouver Whitecaps and Team Canada women's soccer coach has made an emotional apology to his victims today. Bob Barradas is being sentenced for sex offenses against 4 players. Karen Larson was there and brings us this update.
Bob Barradas stood at the front of the courtroom and in a quavering voice said he was sorry for the pain, upset, and trauma he caused before addressing each of his 4 victims individually. The apology lasted several minutes. At the end, he broke down and cried. The former provincial, national, and Vancouver Whitecaps women's coach pleaded guilty to 3 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of touching a young person for a sexual purpose back in February. The offenses took place between 1988 and 2008. The players were all teenagers at the time. Barradas is certain to serve jail time. Defense is asking for 8 months in prison, followed by 4 months of house arrest. Crown submitted for 2 years less a day in prison. In defense submissions, Barradas' lawyer William Smart said his client did not understand the power differential between a player and a coach. He said because of the intense media coverage, Barradas will face a life of stigma. A decision is expected at a future date. Karen Larson, CBC News, North Vancouver.
Being the first in your family to go to university can be challenging, but a club at UBC is working to change that. As Benit Brach reports, students say the program is helping overcome vast and unfamiliar obstacles for first-generation students.
During Zara Fazl's first university orientation at UBC, she had to turn to Google for help.
I didn't know what credits were. I didn't know what a faculty was.
Fazl is the first person in her family to attend university, and with that, a scholarship.
So I was a low-income student from Tanzania. I couldn't afford university within my home country.
But with her milestone came challenges.
Because of not knowing the system, I ended up in a very intensive program that I felt was not a match for me. And so throughout first year, I struggled academically a lot.
It's why Fazl took it upon herself to help people in similar situations. She founded the UBC First Generation Students Union. First Generation students are broadly defined as those who have not had immediate family members attend university.
They have unique challenges within the school systems that other students may not face.
And to help, peers offer students advice and emotional support in the club. Wilson, too, says by defining themselves as first-generation students, they better understand one another.
We can share some of the strategies that we've used to, overcome some of the obstacles that are faced by all of us. Yeah.
Experts say first-generation students have a harder time getting into university.
If you have at least one university-educated parent, your chances of going to university go through the roof.
And those students are at greater risk of dropping out.
I would hear a lot from them would be, I just don't know if I'm university material. What if I don't belong here? What if this is not the right choice?
And that's why clubs like this have become so important, as a space to overcome barriers and for first-generation students to draw strength from one another. Benit Brach, CBC News, Vancouver.
The City of Vancouver will appeal a court ruling that prevents it from limiting how much single-room occupancy landlords can raise the rent between tenants. A BC Supreme Court judge quashed rent control bylaws put in place by the city last year. The mayor says they were meant to keep rents low for people who have very low incomes. But property owners successfully argued the city overreached its authority. There are roughly 7,000 SRO rooms across 157 buildings in the downtown core. We now have video of an incident involving orcas that saw a BC man hit with a $12,000 ticket. He attempted to interact with the whales and got the largest fine ever issued from the DFO. You can see Thomas Gould hanging off the ladder on the back of a boat he put in the path of the whales. You can see a black dorsal fin to the right as a pod of 7 orcas comes within a few meters of a boat. Crown lawyers argued Gould intentionally put himself in the way of the orcas. He pleaded guilty to violating the Federal Fisheries Act, which prevents boats from getting within 200 meters of whales.
There's certainly more infractions that happen out on the water than there are fines given out. I think that this fine is going to be a really clear and loud message to everybody out on the water that there are people watching, and if you are behaving poorly, there's going to be consequences.
She says orcas in particular are very sensitive to sound since they rely on their own acoustics to communicate. The rules about how close people can get depend on the species and the location. Year-round on the water, people must stay at least 200 meters from all killer whales. The same rule applies to other whales, dolphins, and porpoises if they have a calf with them. But around the south coast of Vancouver Island, boaters have to stay even further away, 400 meters from orcas. Fisheries Canada recommends 1,000 meters, that there is no fishing and boats slow down to 7 knots. They should also place the engine in neutral and turn off fish finders.
If you're going to be on the water, whether it's in a commercial or a recreational sense, even if you are whale watching or not, if you are entering these animals' habitat and if you are going to be operating on the water, it is your responsibility to know what the rules and regulations are.
She says boating is like driving a car. It's important to know the rules of the road. To wildfires now. There are 2 burning in northern BC, and they're growing rapidly in size. The Battleship Mountain wildfire, about 50 kilometers west of Hudson's Hope, is now thought to be 2,000 hectares in size. High winds from the south are feeding into hot and dry conditions. Meanwhile, also near Hudson's Hope, the BC Wildfire Service has upgraded the Dinosaur Lake wildfire to out of control. Officials say that fire is not threatening any structures. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us now with the forecast. And Joe, I understand that we're not seeing it here in Vancouver, the smoky skies, but it's happening in parts of BC.
It is. And Anita, if you look out towards the horizon, you can see that low-level brown haze. You kind of have to have a clear shot, but take a look at the pictures that we're seeing from across the south coast today, really concentrated in through the Fraser Valley, where we saw it moved in yesterday evening and really amplifying through the day today. And I was checking some of the air quality spots, down around 4 on the air quality health index that goes from 1 to 10 plus. So that's a moderate risk. Just keep that in mind if you were thinking of going for a late evening run. Those at risk for respiratory illness getting close to concerning levels. We don't have a special weather statement in place, but you can really see from these pictures that brown quality to the air that actually extends all the way out to the island. Now, we spoke to BC Wildfire Services today about the location of these fires because there are a lot about. Take a listen.
There are a number of large wildfires burning south of the border, so that is contributing. There's southerly winds that are bringing that smoke up northwards, and then because we're seeing that the atmosphere is very stable right now, so there is an upper ridge, meaning that there's not very much atmospheric mixing happening and that smoke isn't dissipating.
Dissipating will be the key as we see that ridge of high pressure break down this weekend, but wildfire risk is at extreme for much of the province thanks to this long, hot, dry spell we've been under. Anita, things are going to change starting Sunday, so I'll break that out on the long range. Some welcomed cooler weather. Don't know if it's going to be enough rain, but I do have some rain to talk about.
Okay, we will talk to you soon. Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
The doors to Vancouver's newest library opened in Chinatown today. In addition to taking out books, the space also serves as a community hub for people of color. Yasmin Gandam talks to the people behind the Vancouver Black Library.
It's carving out a safe space for a community that's long lost a place to gather. It might call itself a library, but for those running the space, it's much more.
We definitely wanted to push the envelope on what a library could be.
The Vancouver Black Library in Chinatown is the first of its kind in Vancouver, and its location on Kiefer Street in Chinatown, just steps from where Hogan Alley was, is a return of sorts for Black culture in the downtown east side. It's a space for people of all backgrounds to attend group events and experience exhibitions by Black artists.
These opportunities accessible through low barrier resources means that we don't just lend books, we also plan to lend software to do anything digital, to create anything.
The project has been in the making for the last 6 months, and the people behind it say it's incredibly needed for the community.
Art spaces and community centers where you can really come to find specific books and literature and resources that are for Black people is unheard of in Vancouver.
So what's on offer? Anything from graphic novels about Black women to historical images by Black photographers. An opportunity for people to learn about the rich history of BC's Black community.
Educate everybody in the community on Black history in BC, the history of Hogan's Alley, and just Black experiences and Black realities so that the community as a whole can feel more connected and there's less isolation for anyone in Vancouver.
The library is now open to the public from 1 to 5 p.m. Admission is also free. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
A key piece of Vancouver's Stanley Cup hope is staying in the city for the foreseeable future. JT Miller is signing a 7-year extension with the Canucks worth $56 million. He led the team in points last season by a wide margin, and Miller put up career highs in nearly every scoring category. But this big deal may not even be the biggest news for him and his family this week. Yep, they are announcing earlier today the birth of a healthy baby boy. What a cutie. Owen Edward Miller arrived yesterday morning. It is the family's 3rd child and their first son. Congratulations. And speaking of firsts, well, this is the first year since the pandemic where COVID restrictions haven't been in place at the P&E. So for a look at what's been happening and as the fair wraps up this weekend, let's go live to our Liam Britton, who is there tonight. Liam, between the cotton candy noodles and the mac and cheese ice cream, you must be having a ball.
Pretty hard to be unhappy at the fair, Anita, and as you can see behind me, lots of families, people coming here to visit. All the stuff is here, the rides, the food, super dogs, but it is a little bit scaled back this year. Daily attendance has been capped, and some days ride passes and tickets have been a little hard to come by. Now, the fair says that's because they want to make sure everyone feels comfortable with COVID in mind. They say they're only expecting about 500,000 people to attend this year, down from 700,000 in 2019. Daniel Escobar, he's seen that. He's been selling parking at the back of his home for years and says business has been slow.
It's a lot busier this year than it has been previous years, that's for sure. Is it as busy as it used to be? No. If you're talking like 3-4 years ago, we used to, essentially I would sit here and I'd park like my whole lot within like 10-15 minutes. Nowadays, I'm sitting out here for a few hours, hence why I'm studying, making the most use of all my time.
Mona Lau has been selling parking for the first time this year. She says it's been a disappointment. Like $100 a day, a couple $100.
No. You're kidding. Sometimes it's none.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
it's not very busy.
Not very busy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The people maybe very cheap. They don't pay any money for.
And now the fair says their own parking lot has only been full about 2 times this year.
Yeah, it's a different year for sure, Liam. And has anything been said about next year? Because I know, they like to keep a tight lip on things, but we know that there's a lot of planning that goes into it, sometimes even years in advance.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like it might be a little too early, or maybe they're just kind of keeping it close to the chest. Spokesperson says they haven't made any decisions on capacity yet, but the fair is kind of in a bit of a transitional position at this point. But there's still tickets available through the long weekend, so if anyone needs their roller coaster or mini donut fix, still chances for that.
Yeah, I might have to check it out. Liam Britton live tonight at the P&E. Thank you.
Thanks, Anita.
An unexpected and unwanted kiss at a Vancouver concert is stirring up controversy online. How singer Alicia Keys is reacting and the troubling blurring between artist and fan is next. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream. This next story is for anyone who enjoys exploring a new book. Every week, our colleagues in Edmonton visit a library and ask a local staff member for a recommendation. Let's take a look at the interesting books they were asked to check out this week.
Hi, my name is Lana Boma, and I'm the library manager at the Saba Beach Public Library. Saba Beach is very interesting to work at because in the summertime we have a lot of people come for the camping and for their cabins, and so our population grows a lot in the summer. It gets very full in the library. Some people, when they're camping, they don't have internet, so they come and use our internet. And we also run a summer reading program, so we get lots of children in the library. It's like a community center in some ways. Sometimes they just come and visit with each other here. I think a small library is very special for the fact that I get to know my patrons very well. One of the things I love is when reluctant readers come in, because I was one myself. I didn't read a full book until I was 20 years old, but I just kept at it. I loved it. After that, I wouldn't stop. So the book I recommend today is A Rip Through Time by Kelly Armstrong. A detective from Canada is in Scotland in an alley. She gets attacked. She wakes up and she is a housemaid that was attacked in that same alley 150 years earlier in Victorian Scotland. And so she's trying to solve a murder, but yet back then women weren't encouraged to do such things. It's so interesting. Thank you for visiting the Saba Beach Public Library. I hope you can come and visit us and keep reading.
Musician Alicia Keys is addressing the incident of a Vancouver fan grabbing her face and kissing her during Monday's concert at Rogers Arena. During her performance, the song Empire State of Mind, Keys walked past the crowd to move between stages. That's when a fan in the audience reached out, took hold of the singer's head and kissed her on the face. Video of the incident has gone viral. Keys has commented on one post, voicing her shock and discomfort. Now the event is calling into question the safety of performers and the behavior of fans at live concerts. For perspective on the Alicia Keys incident and the vulnerabilities of performers, I'm joined by Lisa Christensen. Lisa is a Polaris Music Prize judge and Juno Awards judge. You're also with the Early Edition. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure.
What do you make of this whole kiss scenario?
It's awful. It's awful when you see these things happen. I get excessive fandom. I've probably been one myself at a show. But the idea that you would invade someone's personal space, and I think in 2022, we know even about doing that just with a regular person, never mind COVID. So to do that to a celebrity just seems incredibly disrespectful.
Well, I think that's what she was saying with her response on the Instagram video, you know, talking about it's 2022, right?
Yeah, we know better.
How exposed are artists on stage?
Very. A quick Google search, you can find a number of incidents where performers are pulled off stage or hurt somehow. I mean, it's quite alarming how many artists have been hurt on stage. They're very exposed. I mean, yeah, you've got security guards ready to tumble the person off the stage, but it doesn't stop the attack. I was watching just before the interview, I was watching where Beyonce was pulled into the crowd right off the stage, and they got her back on again. And you know, credit to her, she just kept singing because that's Beyonce. But there's no reason why that should happen.
Yeah, I think you see that with a lot of the performers. They keep singing, they keep going because that's what they're taught to do. But you can see, even with this video, that Alicia Keys is uncomfortable in the situation.
Yeah, you can definitely see it.
What should people keep in mind when they go to an event like this to see someone they love?
Well, just imagine, would you like somebody grabbing you and kissing you on the cheek without your permission? No, of course you wouldn't. So act like the way you would around a fan, especially, you know, when an artist comes out into the audience, it's an incredibly generous expression on their part to want to be with their fans. So treat them with respect, show them that you honor it, and give them something to trust, and they can continue being the performer they want to be.
Lisa Christensen, thank you.
You're welcome.
Emergency aid is pouring into flood-ravaged Pakistan, but it's a race against time as those impacted face disease.
Yesterday, South Africa said it had captured a Soviet soldier in Angola and had killed more than 4 others. The prisoner has been identified as Sergeant Major Nikolai Pestrasov. He was caught during a skirmish with South African troops, but so far no one has seen him in public, and the Kremlin has yet to comment on his capture. For the first time in 10 years, Soviet warships have entered Canada's 200-mile economic zone. 4 ships, one of them a guided missile cruiser, entered Canadian-patrolled waters northwest of Vancouver Island last Saturday. Their maneuvers have been closely watched by Canadian and American naval ships. Russ Patrick has this report.
The HMCS Kootenay was back at its base in Esquimalt this afternoon after spending 3 days and nights shadowing the Soviet ships, 3 of which are armed with guided missiles. The shadowing exercise took place over 1,600 kilometers. The U.S. Navy first spotted the Russians off Alaska. The Canadians intercepted them as they steamed toward Tofino on Vancouver Island. About 100 kilometers off the BC coast, the Russians suddenly headed in a southwesterly direction. Commander Brian Beckett was in charge of the chase.
Were any weapons fired out there?
Yes, I observed the Soviet cruiser doing gunnery exercises last evening. He, of course, wasn't firing them at me. He was just exercising, as is his right in international waters.
But there were no weapons fired at you, nor vice versa?
No, certainly not.
How close did any or all of those ships get to you?
Well, the nearest I got to any ship, which was one of the Krivac destroyers, was 150 yards.
Did you say 150 yards?
150 yards, yes. I normally wouldn't go that close, but he came over a little closer to me to make a point, and but that is not an extreme situation, and I really wasn't concerned for safety. Things were well in hand.
The Soviet ships are now reported 500 kilometers off the coast of Oregon. Russ Patrick, CBC News, Canadian Forces Base, Esquimalt.
A BC man is doing his best to keep in touch with his friends and family back in Pakistan. Ali Najaf is increasingly concerned about the impacts of devastating floods. He spoke to our colleagues on the coast about Pakistan's most pressing needs.
Like, I talked to a lot of my friends. My brother is currently on the ground helping his friends out, and the words can't describe what is happening back home right now. We need a lot of non-perishable food items so they can be easily transported to the people, as well as like clothes, right? Because a lot of people, like, their basic stuff has been washed away. So we need like basic stuff like medical care, medical kits, non-perishable food, and clothing.
Humanitarian aid has been flowing into the flood-devastated country, but there are new worries as the death count since mid-June climbs above 1,200. As Rebecca Bunden reports, waterlogged regions face the increasing risk of disease and homelessness.
Floodwater has been flowing down through the Sindh district of Pakistan and affecting more villages in floods that have already engulfed a third of the country. People are being evacuated as they flee for safety from areas that are being affected. The floods are due to monsoon rains, which are the heaviest that Pakistan has seen in decades. The UN has described this as a monsoon on steroids. The government in Pakistan is blaming climate change for the disaster, and it's calling on rich nations in particular to help with this crisis. Several countries have already lent support, and humanitarian aid and funding is being provided by countries including Canada, the United States, China. But Pakistan seems to be saying that it needs much more given the scale of this crisis. The United Nations this week launched an appeal appealing for more than $200 million of funds to help support Pakistan with some of the immediate needs. There are a lot of people who are without food, drinking water, shelter, and medicine. Pakistan estimates that the damage is more than $13 billion, and in fact the figure could go far higher. As the destruction continues in the country, there's still more monsoon rain to come, and flooding is continuing there. So it's a massive challenge that authorities are trying to deal with at the moment. The World Health Organization has also warned that people in flood-affected areas are at risk of waterborne diseases, including cholera, and also infectious diseases like COVID-19.
as people crowd into these relief shelters. Rebecca Bunden for CBC News, Mumbai.
Under constant threat from the Kremlin, Ukraine's civilian hospitals are facing the horrors of war on a daily basis. One Chilliwack man, a retired corporal, is helping bring equipment and medical basics to the war-ravaged country. He has made it his mission. Murray Brewster has his story of a Canadian veteran volunteering in Ukraine as he comes to terms with another war in another country.
This is a story about the intersection of two unrelated wars. And now retired Corporal John Lowe. He was left scarred by the killing fields of Kandahar and more deeply wounded by the fall of Afghanistan.
I do remember feeling, I wish I could have done more. I wish that what we did in Afghanistan helped.
His feeling of helplessness returned with Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine.
I became, quite upset and angry about the situation. And I knew at a certain point that I would have to make a choice between being angry and miserable about what was happening to innocent people or whether I was going to make a difference on my own.
Lowe joined a nonprofit and knocked on doctors' offices' doors in BC looking for surplus medical supplies. Small donations of boxes of gauze and bandages that soon became gowns and gloves and kept snowballing.
We are at Cabro Linens here in Burnaby, and we're just filling up this 5-ton here. One of the requests that was made over in Ukraine was just clean linens.
Awash in many modern-day medical necessities, Lowe stuffed suitcases, 26 of them. He took the supplies to Ukraine himself last June, documenting his journey on his phone.
So what's going on right now, Terry?
So right now we have a air raid siren going off. And we've been having these actually for the past 3 nights now. They've been going off quite consistently.
Canadian volunteers drove the medical supplies to the front under harrowing conditions.
I'm tired. I'm getting woken up by bombs all the time. Like I said, that impression that I don't know how Ukrainians can do it for forever. Because I'm so tired already.
Back in Canada, more donations poured in. Last weekend, volunteers filled an entire sea container. Keep it coming, says the man who raised the cash for the shipment.
As long as they supply equipment, we're going to keep shipping this equipment.
Ukraine may be slipping from the headlines in Canada, but these volunteers believe Canadians will not tire of seeing veterans do something meaningful. Murray Brewster, CBC News, Ottawa.
To the U.S. now, nearly 2 years after he lost the American election, Donald Trump remains an influential figure for many on the political right. But there are others who see him and his supporters as a threat to democracy. As Kyle Bax reports, President Joe Biden spoke about that last night in a primetime address to the nation.
An unmistakable message. The U.S. president delivering a dark warning about the state of democracy in the country, condemning Donald Trump supporters in the Republican Party. He addressed Trump directly by name on 3 different occasions, and those loyal to the former president.
For a long time, we've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it. Each and every one of us. That's why tonight I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology.
Joe Biden also painting an uplifting vision for the future, boasting about recent progress on climate change and infrastructure investments. It's no secret that Biden's presidency hasn't gone well, leading to low polling numbers. That's why this speech could be an attempt to reframe the vote, not about his performance, but instead about the Republicans and the direction that party could be heading. Republicans say Biden is the real threat to democracy, calling him the divider-in-chief.
Joe Biden has launched an assault on the soul of America, on its people, on its laws, on its most sacred values. He has launched an assault on our democracy.
Some Republicans today say Biden should have used this big televised speech to focus on different issues, like a plan to tackle inflation and crime. The back and forth will continue this weekend. Biden will be back in Pennsylvania in a few days for another event. Meanwhile, Trump is headed to the state too for his own rally on Saturday night. Kyle Bax, CBC News, Washington.
They've been dishing out late-night vegetarian eats since 1968, but the Nam restaurant is hanging up a for sale sign. Why? Well, we'll tell you next. And at 6:35, a live look at Bamfield tonight on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Might be September, but it's more like Fogust at the tiny village. Your weekend forecast is coming up next.
Working on Heartland for over a decade with horses has really made me appreciate being able to capture that on film. Because it's not an easy thing, you know, horses and any animal, you know, you can't just say, okay, show up, stand on your mark, know your motivation, and let's do this scene. They're just living the way that they feel is right in the moment. And as an actor working with horses, I feel like my real performances come from a scene with a horse, because I know that looking into their eyes, they're not involved in the script process. They don't know really what we're doing here. They're just giving me full truth. I'm Amber Marshall, and I am so excited to share my 5 favorite horse movies. So I'm going to start with number 5, which is War Horse.
He won't obey anyone else. He won't be any good in the war neither. He shies at every sound.
They just create that feeling, you know. There's Joey the horse, who starts in a very lovely relationship, and then just the hardship that he goes through throughout the movie. Number 4 would be Spirit. Now, Spirit is an animated movie, so you might think, you know, like, that's not really a horse movie, but if you watch Spirit, you will cry. How they were able to get the emotion that they did through those cartoon horses is beyond me. But I tell you, every time I see Spirit running in the field with the music behind him, I get a tear. Number 3, I'm gonna put My Friend Flicka. Now, this is the original Flicka back in the 40s. And this is a movie that I watched as a child growing up. As a story, it was so heartwarming. And I remember being a child just thinking, I wish that I could have a relationship like that with a horse. Number 2, The Horse Whisperer.
I read this article about what you do for people with horse problems.
Well, truth is, I help horses with people problems.
Well, whichever way you want to put it.
You dive into the roles and you just feel like there is this connection that is beyond horse and human. We see these moments that horses look to humans for guidance and direction, and in the same time, humans look to horses for that same thing. So The Horse Whisperer really, it's an emotional roller coaster, and I think that it takes the viewer through that journey really well. My number 1 horse movie would be The Black Stallion. There's a scene when the Black Stallion is running on the beach with the young Alec, the child. And I think everyone who watches that movie wants to recreate that moment in their own life. I know I sure did. As someone who loves horses so much, and seeing that connection between horse and child, it's a magical thing. It's almost like the Black Stallion's a big puppy dog running around having fun on the beach. So if you're wanting to bring a tear to your own eye, I suggest checking out any one of those films I just mentioned. There's something about horses and music and just the magic of the two together.
After a long hiatus, many choirs are making music again. The last 2 years have been difficult since singing in groups was linked to the spread of COVID. Restrictions are lifting, though, and as Sandra Abma shows us, it will take time before everyone is singing from the same songbook.
The sound of voices joined in song at Christ Church Cathedral in downtown Ottawa. Artistic Director Andrew McInerney leads the These choristers are finally doing what they love best, making music together. But McInerney says that he and other directors are wondering where all the singers have gone.
That people who have been singing for a long time are not returning to singing. And it's because they're concerned, they feel out of practice because they've had a 2-year break, or they're concerned because their voice has changed and they just feel out of sorts.
Not only longtime members, but recruiting new, younger voices is proving a challenge as well.
Children in particular who have not had any opportunity at school to sing in groups and who would normally join choirs around the ages of 7, 8, 9, 10, that those children are not joining at the choirs at the moment.
That goes for the younger singers like 12-year-old Jason Sedaros, who wishes more friends would join in.
It's almost like no one wants to sing.
What are they missing out on by not coming and singing with other people, do you think?
Well, having a full choir is pretty awesome and cool to hear. Again, the community, it's like having everybody around and hanging out with everybody. Yeah, and ping pong, snacks.
Early on in the pandemic, the act of singing together was linked to the transmission of the coronavirus. According to Choral Canada, an advocacy group for choirs, singing got a bad rap.
It turns out that singing and singing in a choir is just at the same level as playing in your sports or talking in your boardroom.
Not every local choir is singing the blues. The Ottawa Children's Choir kept a rigorous online program going on for the past 2 years. Choirs are making accommodations to make sure everyone is welcome. The message behind this melody is clear. If you love to sing, there's a place for you in a choir. Sandra Abma, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, it's a Kitsilano icon, famous for serving late-night vegetarian and vegan favorites. But now, its days might be numbered. The Nom is for sale. We spoke to the owner and several shocked patrons. Take a look.
It's been here since 1969, and I think the year before that, 1968, it operated as the Love Cafe, right in the middle of the whole Rainbow Road scene down here in Kitsilano. Through the 70s, there was a store over here and the dining area down over here with the one long table. And it went through some changes, a bunch of things happening, the conflicts with the farm, ended up the Nom shrinking right down to nothing, which at that point was taken over by the current owners in '81, and they built it back up to what it is today. I joined in '90, and that was just a year after we turned 24 hours. We stopped doing that once the COVID hit and closed for 6 weeks, and it never really came back into part of the scheduling. It was hard to find people who wanted to work. Vancouver will be shocked. We have a large, wonderful customer base here at the Nom. So many people have come here over the years and talk about how they used to come here back in the old days, and they're still coming, and hasn't changed much.
Very stunned, actually. Living at UBC as a student, this was a late night stop.
It's just really sad. I mean, I haven't found a menu that's quite as versatile as the Nom.
So many years now, so many memories and changes throughout my life, and the Nom has been a constant through it all. And same with a lot of us that have been here for 20 years plus, which is quite a few of us. For now, we're here. I'm going to keep steering the ship and, keep going as long as we can. Like I say to them, don't jump ship yet, because if there was a sale, that takes time. I'm hoping we can squeak through to Christmas or spring, or maybe we just keep staying here. It's unknown.
Check in with meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe. And Joe, I think people were hoping for one final stretch of good weather, but it's just not so, is it?
It's just not so, Anita. Yeah, I know. We were kind of hoping we could sneak a long weekend in under the summer umbrella, but umbrellas will probably be in the cards for Sunday. It's not a bad long weekend overall. Let me start you off with the warnings that are dropping as we speak. In the past hour, we now no longer have the heat warnings for Vancouver Island or the Sunshine Coast, still in place for the Fraser Canyon. We'll see one more day of heat for the interior, but watch as I take through the forecast. Our high pressure ridge bringing us that stagnant air is tracking east, still holding strong in through Alberta. But look at that cool down with those greener temperatures. Also looking at a special weather statement I should mention up through central coastal sections, Haida Gwaii, 100 kilometer per hour winds possible early tomorrow morning as that cold front slides through. This is right through to early next week, and you can see much more seasonal temperatures in place now that we get into a Pacific flow. So no longer is it a stagnant sinking air mass. We've got that zonal flow, which brings in the fresher air and the showers. So those showers working their way down the coast, hitting Port Hardy tomorrow afternoon and into Metro Vancouver for Sunday afternoon. Just a slight risk of a sprinkle tomorrow. I think most of the rain will hold off until Sunday afternoon. At this point, it's not a lot, 5 to 10 millimeters for Metro Vancouver, more up towards the Sunshine Coast. And we could use more. We are still under level 3 drought for the island. Things are looking very dry across the south. And as we mentioned, fire danger continues to creep up. Still seeing those 30s tomorrow and through the Kootenays. You'll get your cool down for Monday in the interior. But look at that. Sunday, 20 degrees. It will feel a full 10 degrees cooler for Sunday. Nice little rebound Monday. I would say that's comfortable. Anita, as we head into early next week, those temperatures that only hit 19 degrees, that'll be the first time we've seen high teens in, think about 36 days. So it's time.
Well, at least it's still sunny. It's not raining.
Good attitude.
Thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
A warning now to check your cupboards and any groceries you recently bought home. Federal health officials have issued a nationwide recall of a specific product linked to food poisoning in Ontario. A dozen people were taken to hospital last weekend. The product is a powder that is commonly found in Asian cuisine, and it's contaminated with aconite. Meg Roberts has more.
Public Health says Delight Restaurant and Barbecue has been given the green light to reopen when the owners are comfortable. Now, York Public Health is warning people of 2 spices that were served here over the weekend that sent a dozen people to hospital. Officials say this galanga powder by a brand called Mr. Right was contaminated with aconite, a substance that can severely affect the nervous system and can be deadly if ingested in large quantities, as well as Eradic's Aconite Kuznetsovy powder by the same brand. It can be used as a traditional herbal medicine, but is not as commonly found in food.
We're still sort of working out the details of what exactly happened, trying to rule out all the different possibilities. But the leading theory right now anyways is that there could have been some mislabeling involved.
According to the back of the Mr. Right package, the importer of the spices is located here behind me in Markham. We went inside and spoke with an employee who says they've given all the information they can to health authorities, but do not want to do an interview. Public Health says they believe the product has been removed from all shelves in the area and that the general public should not be concerned. Although the incident caused 12 people to end up in hospital, 4 requiring intensive care, York Public Health says they will not be fining or charging any businesses for this incident.
Every person we worked with, every institution, restaurant, retailer, supplier, all of that, were very cooperative. And like I said, we have sort of confidence that they've done everything they can do to take actions.
Public Health say they're pleased to report only 1 person is left in hospital out of the 12 who were originally admitted. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Markham.
Lots of Canadians love sugar-loaded drinks, and that is especially true in Newfoundland and Labrador, where consumption of those beverages is highest. Now they're paying a price for their habit, literally. This week, the provincial government implemented a tax on those drinks. As Henrik Willem explains, the transition hasn't been so sweet for retailers.
Some sugary drinks cost extra here in the province, like bottled soda, fountain drinks, fruit juices, or sweetened energy drinks. All are taxed differently.
We're at 13 different size bottles that we have different taxes for every single bottle because it's by liter, not by bottle. And we also have to look at the ingredients on them as well because it's not straightforward.
Not all have found the transition to be a smooth one.
We've actually had 1 staff member working full-time on it for at least a week now. adjusting prices, doing the calculations that are required, because it's not a straightforward tax in any way, shape, or form.
I'm still getting calls, even as of today, from members who are still confused, trying to implement this. Am I right or am I wrong? It's those types of problems that are going to continue to happen for our members for the months to come. Fact is, this tax was rolled out very quickly. A lot of the information for our members wasn't even available until just recently in the last month or so. So it's been difficult all around.
And there are still plenty of questions.
We have had 3 phone calls just in the last week with the government program trying to decipher the rules and regulations online that are available. The information isn't quite readily available for us. And it's just, the whole team in the office sit together and we read through the regulations and try to decipher them because there is so many rules and regulations.
Hanley questions the timing of the tax.
The whole fact that we're adding another tax right after a pandemic is a huge discussion that needs to be had. There's a lot of businesses that really struggled during the pandemic, and I think we just needed more time to recover from the pandemic before they implemented something.
Hanley hopes the provincial government will continue to work on streamlining the guidelines for the sugary drink tax. Both Hanley and Cormier say they're expecting the next weeks, maybe even months, to be full of questions for retailers. Henrike Wilhelm, CBC News, St. John's.
There are many ways to enjoy the great outdoors in the summer. You could go camping, hiking, or fishing. You can also take your clothes off and relax at the nudist park near Toronto. Bear Oaks is celebrating its 50th anniversary.
In 1972, Eric and June Jarvis bought the land because they want to develop, but they use a term nudist at the time, a nudist park. And it's gone through a variety of iterations. Well, we've been very successful in attracting people of all ages, including youth. Because especially since we're going back to naturism as a movement, as an ideology.
I was a little shy to come, didn't have some friends that would join with me, so I just jumped the gun and just dived right in.
A lot of the people generally judge you because of what clothes you're wearing, what car you're driving, and here, as soon as you start to take your clothes off, there's none of that.
Connect with nature, connect with really good people, and enjoy ourselves as we are.
In fact, you can even be a naturist when you're fully dressed walking out in the mainstream world, because you then see advertising and you see the push towards achieving certain fashion as really perverse, because you understand that that's not who we really are deep down. And it's a way to be more natural. It may not be normal, but it is the way we've been designed. So it is the more natural way, hence the word naturism.
In the battle for television supremacy, Amazon is pulling out all the stops. A massive new Lord of the Rings prequel is the latest salvo in the streaming wars. But does it succeed? Eli Glasner breaks it down next.
I'm Christine Work. This is my current gardening space. I grow a range of vegetables and fruits to have awesome tasting food year round, and I do that by preserving a lot of the harvest in a number of cool and interesting ways. The preserving method depends on what you want to do with the food and what's possible with the food. If you don't have canning equipment, your freezer works. Sometimes you have to cook it a little, so you blanch it for like 30 seconds to a minute, depending on the food type, and then you freeze it. Or you make recipes and you freeze them. That's the simplest way. Water bath canning is another method where we can can fruits or we can pickle vegetables. And this makes them last in a jar on your shelf. So you don't have to use freezer space to store your food, and it lasts for years. Using cherry tomatoes, all I do is take off the stem with this fancy little tool. I chop it in half, or in quarters if it's big, put it in a jar. So when we have a full jar that's been properly processed, we take the jar with its boiling water, so this would be hot, and we place it in the water bath. And then you have a certain time that you put on, and you add 5 minutes. So if this was a 20-minute recipe, I would add 5 minutes for being in Edmonton. Dehydrating is a different method. It does require special equipment. So it's low cooking food for hours. You can do fruits, vegetables. They're useful for dehydrating a lot, to have less storage, also counter safe. This is the pressure canner. My favorite is pressure canning because it's new. And I can do so many more things in it, including vegetables, and if you're into it, you can also can meat this way. Over the winter after I got my pressure canner, I canned a lot of my own beans because I couldn't find kidney beans canned. So I did black beans, kidney beans, baked beans, later did lentils. Now anytime I have a recipe, I have my beans ready. I find it deeply satisfying to take a tiny seed, put it in soil under my grow lights, watch it grow in the garden, and then harvest it when ready. It not only tastes way better than what you can buy in the store because we ripen them on the vine and they're as fresh as you can get, but it's also just pleasurable knowing that I can grow my own food and kind of take care of myself with nutrients from my own garden.
At a cost of $1 billion, television's most expensive program has premiered, Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And Amazon believes it will not only lure customers to its platform, but to its shopping site as well. Eli Glasner shows us why the small screen isn't so small anymore.
The skies are strange.
The Lord of the Rings is back. Set thousands of years before the original trilogy, the new series finds dwarves and elves facing an old evil.
Have you heard of him, lad? Have you heard of Sauron?
Coming from Prime Video, an appendage of Amazon, the streaming site spent mightily. Global TV rights alone cost $250 million. Add in over $400 million on the first season, plus marketing, and this is a billion-dollar bet.
If the evil rising is left unchecked.
But the business model is different for Amazon.
But keep in mind that Amazon doesn't have to make money on Prime Video. It's all about the larger ecosystem that it is playing in. It wants people to have a positive worldview of Amazon as a company.
But there are other risks. 2 unknown showrunners, a cast of fresh faces, and perhaps the most treacherous element of all, the fans.
It was just cool to read about orcs and elves and fantastical battles and magic.
Growing up, Christina Warmbrun loved The Lord of the Rings. But when she published an article about racism in the novels, she was bullied offline.
From white supremacists, from trolls, you name it, I was getting all sorts of threats.
One day this will be your kingdom.
She's optimistic since the new series offers a more multicultural view of Middle-earth.
Everyone must decide who we shall be.
Obviously, fandoms will be fandoms. Some have their positive reactions, some have their negative reactions. But I think overall it seems really promising.
And with the series launching in 240 countries, fans worldwide will soon be judging it for themselves. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Toronto.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's hard to keep up with all the changes to streaming these days and all those new platforms, but the content that's coming out is really, really good. Thanks for watching CBC Vancouver News at 6 tonight. I'm off for the next 2 weeks. Dan and Leanne will be your hosts. Hope you have a wonderful weekend.